In this video, we will see how to make the surrounding areas and texture them with grass and sand. Let's take this enclosed area first. Select all the edges, press N, and change the mean crease level to 1, under Item menu. The edges should turn pink. If the track were flat, you could have just selected a few edges and pressed F as shown, and this should have done the job. But if you look closely, the faces have not formed properly. This is because there is a big difference in height. So delete the faces, if you have done it this way. If I unhide the ground plane, you can see the difference. To solve this problem, you need to extrude smaller faces from the edges of the roads, while keeping the snapping enabled, so that the mesh takes the shape of the ground. In such cases it is better to pre-plan your workflow. Select 2 or 3 faces, and press E to extrude, and make faces as shown. Then change to vertex selection mode, select the vertices and press G and left click, to snap it to the ground. Try to keep the faces as quads, so that you can add loop cuts to match the ground precisely. Avoid making triangles. Shortcut for loop cut is Ctrl+R. Follow the same process, and fill up the area. You can make faces with 4 or more number of sides. If you see some pink edges in the extruded faces, select them and decrease the mean crease to 0. Select all the faces, create a new material named grass_sand, and click Assign button. Click on the dot next to Base Color in Materials tab, and select Image Texture. Next switch to the Shading window. Click on Open and select your grass texture. You can find these textures on textures.com. Click on Add and search for image texture. We'll use this for normal map. Similarly, search for normal map node, and add it. Join the color slots of the image texture node and normal map node, and then join the normal slot of normal map to normal slot of BSDF shader. Next click open and select your normal map. Adjust the strength of the normal map in normal map node. In the image texture node used for normal map, change sRGB to non-color. This is to be done every time you use a normal map. Go to UV editing window, keep all faces with your grass texture selected and unwrap them by pressing U. Go back to shading window, and you can see that the texture is mapped properly, but it needs to be scaled down. Now add a mapping and texture coordinate node. Connect UV slot of texture coordinate node to left vector slot of mapping node. Then connect the output vector slot of mapping node to the input vector slots of the two image textures. Now you can change the scale of the texture. Now select all nodes except the rightmost node of material output, and press Shift+D to duplicate it, or you can right click and then select duplicate. Now change the images in the duplicated image texture nodes to sand texture and its corresponding normal map. Also change sRGB to non-color in image texture node used for normal map. Now add a mix shader node and connect the output of the two principal BSDF nodes to the two shader inputs of mix shader node. Now connect the output of mix shader to surface input of material output node. Now if you change the value of factor in the mix shader node, you can see one of the texture gets lighter than the other. We can also control this using a noise texture. To do so, add a color ramp node and a noise texture node. Connect the color output of noise texture node to factor of color ramp node. I have used factor output of noise texture node by mistake. Next, join the color output of color ramp to factor of mix shader. Now you can play around with color ramp sliders and parameters of noise texture nodes and set it as you like. Change the noise texture from 3D to 4D, the value of W will act as a seed value for noise texture. In case you don't have a texture as seamless as this one, and if the tiling is quite obvious, you can use the polygon Uber mapping node made by Blender Guru. It has all the functions of this in-bit mapping node, and you can also add local rotation to individual tiles, to make tiling look less obvious. Search for polygon Uber mapping node and add it. Connect the UV output and input slots of texture coordinate node to the new mapping node respectively. Then connect the UV output to the vector input of the two image texture nodes. Change the value of scale to 10. Duplicate the Uber mapping node, and replace the old mapping node with the new one for the other texture as well. Now you can play around with the mosaic rotation and mosaic noise values to get the required result. Follow the same procedure for the rest of the areas that are enclosed by the racetrack. Assign different materials to the different areas because you may need to make them separate meshes before exporting, and it is much easier to separate based on materials. If you found this video helpful, consider giving this video a thumbs up, and subscribing to my channel. In the next video, we will see how to make the areas outside of the racetrack.